They say you can measure your worth in silence, how long someone takes to notice you've stopped laughing, stopped speaking, stopped being there. I vanished from that party, and not a single soul followed. Not her. Especially not her. I didn't slam the door. I didn't toss my glass or cause a scene. I simply walked out, stepped over the string of fairy lights at the patio edge, and disappeared into the elevator. The music inside was playing something synthetic and soulless, but even that felt more genuine than what I had just left behind. And no one came after me. Let's rewind. Just a little. She booked the venue like it was a spa appointment. Effortless. But the deposit? That came from me. Quietly. One of those, can you just take care of it, babe? I'm slammed with calls moments. I took care of a lot of things. A lot. Candles. Table arrangements. The backup ice delivery. I was there when the string lights blew a fuse and helped the staff run an extension cord through the service corridor. No one noticed. No one ever does the night before a celebration. Fast forward. Night of. Everyone's beaming under the rooftop glow. People swirling cocktails, flashing teeth, plastic compliments. She's at the center of it, like gravity bends to her. That gold dress, that practiced laugh. Then me, arriving with the desserts because the delivery guy canceled last minute, and she couldn't leave the party looking sweaty. I hand the boxes to a server and wait for her to wave me over. She doesn't. Instead, she spins in place, places one hand on a colleague's arm and announces, "Oh, that's just my driver. Sweet guy. Helped with setup." They laugh. They move on. I stand there in a suit I hadn't worn since my cousin's funeral, holding a pen I borrowed to sign for her champagne invoice earlier that day. And no one looks twice. Not even her. Not even a glance to say just kidding or thanks for coming, honey. When I finally pulled her aside near the restroom hallway, out of earshot, between floral wallpaper and a mop bucket, all she said was, "You should be grateful I even let you in. This is a high-end event." No flicker of irony. Just boredom. Like I was delaying her next drink. So I left. No speeches. No guilt tripping. No asking why. I took off my name tag. Yes, she made me wear one, and tucked it into my jacket pocket like a used tissue. I walked down 12 floors because I didn't want to risk sharing the elevator again. The city outside had more honesty in its chill than the whole rooftop combined. She didn't call. Not that night. Not the one after. What I didn't expect was the knock at my door 2 weeks later. Her parents. Pale, nervous, and holding an envelope like it had teeth. They looked at me like I was about to be hit by something I couldn't see coming. And they were right. They stood there awkwardly, her parents, on my porch like they were delivering a package they didn't want to be responsible for. Her mom, Judith, clutched the envelope to her chest like it might escape. Her dad, Gregory, kept shifting his weight like he was considering turning back at the last second. It was a cold morning. You could smell frost before you saw it. I was still in my sweatpants, a hole in the knee and a coffee stain I couldn't remember making. It didn't matter. I wasn't expecting guests, especially not them. Judith was the first to speak. "We didn't come here to defend her," she said, voice trembling but not from the cold. We thought you should see something. Before she finds a way to lie about it." Gregory cleared his throat. "We weren't even supposed to know. Fallon doesn't know we know. But we thought, if anyone deserves the truth." He didn't finish that sentence. They handed me the envelope like it was radioactive. No explanations. Just a "we're sorry" and a "please don't tell her we came." Then they left. Didn't even wait for me to open it. Judith looked like she was on the verge of tears. Gregory didn't look at me once. I closed the door and stared at the envelope on my kitchen counter for nearly an hour. It wasn't sealed, but I treated it like it might explode. My thoughts were racing and tripping over each other. Why now? Why after 2 weeks of silence? And what could possibly be in there that her parents were willing to cross a line for? When I finally opened it, the air felt thinner. It was a collection of printed screenshots, text from a group chat, maybe a dozen pages, all laid out in order. At first glance, it was hard to tell what I was looking at. There were inside jokes, emojis, fragments of conversations between Fallon and names I didn't recognize. But then I saw the thread. A text from Fallon to someone named Brooklyn B. "He still thinks we're just busy with work. LOL. He dropped $3K on the party like a little puppy wagging its tail. I called him the driver in front of everyone. You should have seen his face." Another one. "I think I might leave him soon. I mean, this new guy is wild. Doesn't ask questions. Doesn't need me to fix him. Unlike Lynn and his sad eyes." Ugh. Then one more. "If I time this right, I get the condo and the ring. He won't fight me. He never does. I swear he'd apologize if I cheated. I dropped the pages. My hands were shaking, not with rage, not even sadness, just disbelief. Not because she wrote those things, but because she meant them. So casually. Like I was a temporary inconvenience in her highlight reel. I sat there for what felt like hours. Her words spinning in my head. Little puppy. Sad eyes. Doesn't fight. Ugh. Each one slicing through whatever pride I had left. And yet, and this is the part that makes me hate myself a little, part of me still wanted her to walk through that door and say it wasn't true. That it was all some twisted joke. A misunderstanding. Something I could fix. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. Still, I didn't act. Not yet. Instead, I did what I always do. I waited. I let the storm form quietly, just beneath my skin. Until something else happened. Something that would finally make me move. Because 2 days later, I got an email from a rental agency. Apparently, Fallon had already scheduled a move-in date. And I wasn't on the lease. I stared at that email like it had insulted me personally. The subject line was so simple, almost cheerful. Move-in details for Fallon Avery, confirmed. The body of the message had check-in instructions, lockbox codes, a welcome packet link. It was a cozy 2-bedroom condo just 20 minutes from our house, my house. The address was unfamiliar, but the timeline wasn't. The lease was set to begin in 3 days. She hadn't just been planning to leave me, she was already gone in her head. And the worst part? I wasn't even worth a conversation. I remember sitting in the dark with my laptop open, my hands frozen on the keys. I kept rereading the email, hoping it would change. But it didn't. It just sat there. Cold. Confirmed. Final. She'd already been nesting in someone else's future, and I was the leftover she didn't even bother to scrape off the plate. I wasn't sure what to do. I'd never been the confrontational type. Fallon always handled our hard talks. Mostly by talking over me. Or spinning the story so I'd feel like I was the one being unreasonable. But something about seeing it in writing, the move, the timeline, the replacement, it jolted something inside me. Not anger. Not revenge. Just this strange, trembling clarity. So I drove to her office. Not with some grand plan or dramatic showdown in mind. I just needed to see her. To hear her voice when I asked about it. I needed to know if she'd still lie to my face the way she lied in texts. I told myself maybe I was misreading things. Maybe she was planning a temporary separation. Maybe. When I walked into the lobby, the receptionist recognized me. Oh, Fallon's husband, right? She just stepped out for lunch. Wait, no, there she is. She pointed to the glass doors behind me. I turned. There she was, holding hands with a man I'd never seen before. Tall, confident. His blazer probably cost more than our washing machine. Fallon was laughing, that high-pitched, camera-ready kind of laugh she used to save for big client meetings. She looked happy, free, like someone who'd never tasted regret. When she saw me, the laugh stopped. Her hand dropped from his. Her smile slipped like a mask losing its grip. "Linwood," she said, stepping forward. "What are you doing here?" I didn't respond right away. I looked past her at the man, who had now stepped back politely but didn't look surprised. Didn't look threatened either. Like he knew I wasn't competition. I reached into my coat and pulled out the printed rental email. "This," I said. "Just wanted to see the look on your face when I asked why I had to find out from a confirmation email that you're moving out." She blinked, then let out a sigh like she was being inconvenienced at the DMV. "Lynn, I was going to tell you," she said, her voice sliding into that gentle, practiced tone she always used when she wanted me to calm down. "It's just been complicated." "No," I said, quieter now. "Complicated is needing space. Complicated is asking for a break. But this? You made plans behind my back. You've been living in 2 worlds and didn't think I deserved to know." She glanced at the man behind her, then back at me. And then, God, I'll never forget it, she smirked. Like a switch flipped. "I figured you'd find out eventually. You're not stupid, Lynn. Just slow. Slow." That one word did more damage than anything else she could have said. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just turned around and walked out of the building. But before I left, I did one last thing. I opened the voice memo app on my phone, hit record, and slipped it into my jacket pocket. Because as I walked away, I heard her say something to him. Something she didn't think I'd catch. "Don't worry, he won't do anything. He never does." And that was the moment everything changed. I didn't go home after leaving her office. I couldn't. The thought of walking back into that house, The same one I spent 2 years fixing up so she could entertain like a grown-up, made my stomach twist. That house had become a tomb I was expected to dust and mow around, while she prepared her glamorous exit from the life we built together. So instead, I drove around aimlessly for hours. Just driving. Not even thinking of a destination. Windows down, cold wind punching me in the face, trying to keep me awake and grounded. When I finally pulled into the old high school parking lot, of all places, I just sat there in the dark. I hadn't been there in almost 2 decades, but it felt appropriate. That's where I first learned to disappear without being noticed. It felt familiar. I opened my phone and replayed the recording from earlier. Don't worry, he won't do anything. He never does. She wasn't wrong. At least, not yet. The thing is, I used to think being kind meant stepping back, that love meant letting her shine. But now I realized I wasn't her partner, I was her audience. A soft, quiet man who applauded from the shadows while she took every bow. And when the curtain dropped, I was expected to sweep the stage. But not this time. That night, I made a decision. Not out of rage, not even to get back at her. I just didn't want to be part of her script anymore. So I started writing my own. The next morning, I called out of work. I used 3 vacation days and a sick day I'd been hoarding like gold coins. I spent the entire day backing up files, sorting documents, printing every financial record I had access to. Fallon thought I didn't pay attention to that stuff. But I did. I always did. I just never said anything. Bank accounts, joint credit cards, subscription services, passwords, the car title, the house deed, the accounts her name wasn't on, the ones she thought I forgot existed. I printed it all. Labeled every folder like a librarian preparing for an audit. By 4 a.m. the next day, everything was packed into 2 boxes. One went into the trunk of my car. The other, I left behind, right in the center of the dining room table, with a note. Don't worry. I didn't do anything. I just left before you could. That morning, I unplugged my phone, disabled location sharing, and deactivated every social media account tied to my name. I didn't slam the door. I didn't leave a trail. I just vanished. I moved into a month-to-month rental across the state line under my middle name. Brought nothing but clothes, my laptop, and my folders. It was small. 1 bedroom, creaky floorboards, a rattling fridge. But it was quiet. And no one rolled their eyes at me when I spoke. Fallon didn't call. Didn't text. Not that she could have. My number was gone. I watched from the outside, quietly, as she tried to reach me through mutual friends. One even sent a message to my old email saying Fallon had shown up at my workplace 2 days after I disappeared, looking like hell. But it wasn't until I got an alert from the security camera I forgot to deactivate, the one on the back porch motion sensor, that I knew she had finally come home. The video clip was only 10 seconds long. It showed her standing on the back patio, wearing heels, mascara streaked, clutching a wine bottle in one hand. She tried the back door. It was locked. Then she just stood there. Not knocking. Not crying. Just standing. And then she kicked over the flower pot I had planted for our anniversary last year. The camera caught it toppling in slow motion. Soil spilling out like guts. The last thing I ever planted for her, crushed under her heel like it meant nothing. That's when I knew she wasn't confused or sorry. She was furious. And Fallon furious was dangerous. 3 days after the camera footage, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I didn't answer. I never do now unless it's work or utilities. But a few minutes later, I checked the voicemail, mostly out of curiosity. The voice on the other end wasn't Fallon's. It was Judith, her mother. Her tone was nothing like before. No concern. No softness. Just clipped panic dressed in politeness. Linwood. I don't know what's going on, but Fallon is in a state. She came here yelling about files and a letter and how you disappeared like a coward. I'm not asking you to explain, but whatever you've done, or not done, she's unraveling. If there's something you're not telling us, maybe you should. Then she hung up. I didn't call back, but it told me everything I needed to know. She'd found the note. She read the paperwork. She realized I hadn't just left emotionally. I protected myself legally. And if there's one thing Fallon couldn't handle, it was being caught off guard. That same night, I got an email from my lawyer. Yeah, I'd retained one just 2 days before I left. We'd started early talks about the divorce, mostly preemptive, but it turned out to be the smartest decision I'd ever made. My attorney said Fallon had reached out through her own counsel, claiming I'd abandoned marital responsibilities and left her with nothing. which was wild, considering she had already signed a new lease and told her friends she was about to upgrade her entire life. Still, she was smart. She knew the law could bend toward emotion if she spun it right. So I didn't respond. Not personally. Just through channels. I thought that would slow her down. It didn't. Instead, she showed up at her parents' house again, this time not with tears, but fury. And here's the twist, she said too much. Later that week, Judith called me again. And this time, she didn't wait for me to respond. She left a voicemail that made my skin go cold. I probably shouldn't say this, but Fallon mentioned something about getting rid of you clean. And then she said, good thing you never read the prenup closely. Linwood, did you two have a prenup? We did. And I had read it. Every page. It was buried in a drawer at our house for years, and I'd skimmed it when we first signed, but I really sat down with it in those last days before I left. You know what I discovered? A clause. Page 7, buried between the legal jargon about assets and inheritances. It read, in the event of infidelity proven through direct or electronic evidence, the offending party relinquishes all claims to jointly held property acquired during the marriage. She'd insisted on including it when we got married. To protect us both, she'd said. Funny how people forget the traps they set for others. The screenshots her parents gave me? The text she sent to Brooklyn B? That thread where she admitted to being with someone else before we even separated? That was evidence. Real, tangible, time-stamped evidence. And Fallon, in her arrogance, had just confirmed to her own mother that she never thought I'd use it. The silence that followed Judith's message was deafening. Not just on the phone. In my chest. In my breath. It was like I'd been holding my pain so tightly that it finally folded in on itself and made room for something else. Resolve. I was done being the guy who waited for the next bad thing to fall from her mouth. I was done staring at doors she slammed, hoping she'd open them again with a softer voice. Now, I had the leverage. And not because I wanted to destroy her, but because she'd tried to erase me. The next day, my lawyer sent a certified letter to her address. Inside, a formal petition for divorce, complete with a copy of the clause, the screenshots, and the line. In accordance with Section 14, C, all shared property now falls under the sole legal ownership of Linwood E. Marsh. 2 hours after it was delivered, Fallon sent an email. No subject line. No greeting. Just one sentence. You won't get away with this. I didn't reply. Because she still hadn't realized this wasn't about getting away. It was about finally stepping out of the wreckage and never looking back. If you've never watched someone unravel in public, count yourself lucky. It's like watching a building collapse, but in slow motion, with screaming. And Fallon's meltdown was no ordinary scene. It was theatrical, timed, emotional enough to seem real, but sharp enough to feel dangerous. She chose the audience carefully. Of course she did. It happened the following week at a brunch spot we used to go to on Sundays. One of those places with artisanal syrup and antique silverware that costs too much to actually use. Fallon didn't know I had mutual friends who still talked to me quietly, over text, checking in, whispering around her loud assumptions. But one of them, Rena, a friend from my old job, messaged me in a rush. She's here at Belmont Cafe, crying, screaming, saying you manipulated her, stole everything, telling people you forged documents. I think she's trying to tank your reputation. At first, I didn't care. Let her scream. Let her soak napkins in crocodile tears. But then Rena added something that stopped me cold. She said you recorded her, and that it was illegal. She's going to bury you for it. Her words. That voice memo. The one I'd made the day she called me slow and laughed with her new mystery man. She hadn't seen me record it, but she'd heard me leave. She must have guessed. And now, she was trying to preemptively poison the well, frame me as the villain before I could reveal the truth. I forwarded the message to my lawyer. He responded instantly. You're within your rights. One-party consent state. But if she's going public, we need to be careful. You ready for this? Was I? No. But I was tired of letting her use my silence like a weapon. That same evening, I got another unexpected message from a burner account on social media. No profile photo. No name. Just a message. You don't know who he really is. Attached was a blurry photo of Fallon's new boyfriend. The same man I saw her holding hands with outside her office. The message continued. His real name's not Levi. That's what he told her. He's been Levi for 3 months. His actual name is Darren L. Murch. Google him. I did. My heart sank. Darren Murch had a sealed court case on record. Not criminal, not directly, but civil lawsuits going back 6 years, mostly from women alleging financial coercion, false identity, fraud. Several dropped before going to trial. A few ended in settlements. He was, essentially, a con artist. Not some petty thief, but a professional manipulator. Charming, persuasive, dangerous. A man who reinvented himself for each relationship. And Fallon, she had no idea. She was his latest mark. And she was too busy trying to destroy me to notice she'd walked straight into his trap. I thought about warning her. For half a second, I really did. But then I remembered every word she'd written about me in those texts. Every insult. Every deception. And I realized something. She wouldn't believe me even if I had proof. But there was someone who might. Judith. I called her. Not to tattletale, not to play hero, but because, despite everything, she had looked me in the eye that day on my porch and handed me the truth. I owed her mine. I told her everything, the fake name, the lawsuits, the screenshots. She didn't interrupt once. When I was done, she let out a long, slow breath and said, "I'm going to handle this, Linwood. You don't owe her anything, but if that man's as dangerous as you say, I'm not letting my daughter fall into that." She paused, then added, "And for what it's worth, I'm sorry for how we treated you." We let her drown you in silence, and we watched it happen. The call ended, but the shift was seismic. For the first time, someone from her world saw what I lived through. Someone else cracked the surface Fallon had worked so hard to polish. And Fallon? She had no idea the ground beneath her had just started to give. It started with a text from Judith that read only, "I need your permission to share the recording." I knew which one she meant. The voice memo. Fallon's smug voice saying, "Don't worry, he won't do anything. He never does." I'd sent it to Judith after our last call, thinking she might need something stronger than warnings and blurry screenshots to believe just how deep her daughter had fallen. I didn't expect her to act on it, but she had. And apparently, things had spiraled quickly. I responded with a single word. Yes. What followed over the next 72 hours felt less like real life and more like the third act of a movie I didn't know I was starring in. Judith, it turned out, had already hired a private investigator, not to dig up dirt, but to protect Fallon. She hadn't told me at the time because she didn't want to get my hopes up. She'd suspected something off about Levi from the moment he stepped into her kitchen during a family dinner and asked how much Fallon's ring was worth. His charm was surface level, she said. His eyes were empty. The PI had tracked Darren Murch, alias Levi Camden, through 6 states under 4 different names. He used the same pattern every time: get close to ambitious women, flash just enough money to earn trust, then slowly drain their accounts under the guise of shared investments. By the time the women realized, he was gone. Phone dead. Name changed. Always one step ahead. But this time, the PI had Fallon's voice. That recording wasn't just damning, it was bait. The investigator reached out to Darren posing as a potential investor. They arranged a casual meeting under the pretense of a startup pitch. Meanwhile, Fallon was still playing damage control, screaming online, demanding apologies from friends who dared to message me happy birthday, publicly claiming I was emotionally manipulative and a coward who faked kindness. Every post got darker, more frantic. Then she did something I hadn't expected. She showed up at my rental. I don't know how she found it. Maybe she followed me. Maybe she still had some access to digital breadcrumbs I'd missed. Either way, I was standing in the kitchen making toast when I heard the knock. I looked through the peephole and there she was, hair tangled, eyeliner smudged, fists clenched at her sides like she was holding in a storm. I opened the door slowly. She didn't say anything for the first few seconds. Just looked at me like she was trying to decide which version of herself to become: the victim, the seductress, the monster. Then she said, "You destroyed me." I blinked. "I let you destroy yourself." She stepped forward like she wanted to come in. I didn't move. "You think you're better than me now," she hissed. You? You were nothing without me. Everyone pitied you. That stupid voice recording? It's illegal, my lawyer said. It's not, I cut in. And your lawyer's bluffing. But that's not what this is about, is it? She narrowed her eyes. You didn't come here to threaten me. You came here because you lost control. You thought I'd always stay, always listen, always do nothing. But I left, Fallon. I'm gone. And I'm not coming back. Her lips curled. You'll regret this. Then I said the thing that finally broke her. Not shouted. Not whispered. Just calm, like the weather turning before a storm. I know who he is. That stopped her cold. Levi, I continued, or Darren, or whatever name he's using this month. I know about the lawsuits, the fake investments, the other women. So do your parents. So does the PI. And soon, so will the police. Her face drained of color. For the first time in our entire relationship, in years of fights, passive-aggressive silences, and weaponized charm, Fallon looked scared. Not angry. Not insulted. Scared. She turned without another word and left. No slamming doors. No final insults. Just silence. Later that night, Judith called again. Her voice was shaking. He's gone, she said. Took her car. Emptied the joint account she opened with him. She's devastated. I didn't respond. Then Judith added, she said something, just now. I don't even know why I'm telling you. She said, I thought I could play him like everyone else. I didn't know Linwood would ever fight back. I didn't feel victorious. Not really. But I did feel lighter. The final court hearing took place on a gray morning in early spring, the kind of day where the sky seems stuck between rain and resolution. I wore the same suit Fallon once mocked me for, the one she said made me look like a bank teller with no ambition. It still fit, and this time, it felt like armor. She arrived late. Alone. No Levi. No lawyer. Her expression was blank, like someone who hadn't just lost a battle, but misplaced the entire map. She didn't look at me as she sat down. I didn't expect her to. My lawyer handled most of the talking. I sat quietly, hands folded, listening as the judge reviewed the documents, the evidence, the prenup. When it was time for Fallon to speak, she simply shook her head and muttered, no objections. That was it. 37 minutes after it began, the marriage that once consumed every breath I had was over. Just like that. Signed, stamped, done. I walked out of the courthouse and didn't look back. But the real ending came a week later. I found a small package waiting for me at the rental, no return address, just my name written in that familiar looped handwriting. Inside was a letter. 5 pages. No theatrics. Just words. Raw. Broken. Honest, in a way Fallon had never managed when we were together. She admitted to using me. She admitted that from the beginning, she thought of me as a placeholder, someone safe after years of chaos. Someone who'd never leave, never fight, never make demands. She said being with me was like standing in still water, and she thought that meant peace until she realized she was the one stirring up the mud. She told me Levi had left without a word. Took her money. Mocked her. She called it karma. She said Judith no longer answered her calls. That her father couldn't even look at her. That for the first time, she felt truly alone. And then, near the end, she wrote this. You were the only person who ever made me feel loved without having to earn it. And I ruined that because I didn't know what to do with it. I thought power looked like control. But now I understand. Real strength looks like walking away from someone like me and never turning back. No apology. Just understanding. It didn't make me forgive her. But it helped me breathe again. 3 months later, I moved out of the rental. Bought a little place by the lake. Nothing fancy, 1 bedroom, old wood floors, windows that rattle when it storms. But it's mine. I planted new flowers, not to replace the ones she crushed, but to prove to myself I could still grow something beautiful. I go for walks now. I read more. I've made peace with the quiet. And sometimes, when the breeze hits just right, I think about how long I lived in someone else's story. But not anymore. I'm writing my own now. And it finally feels like home.